Yes, good evening, everybody. I assume that you can hear me. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, so let's start. Heading is patterns of migration. Pattern of migration. Right. Right in the form of points. Okay. First point, number one. Men have always moved and migrated. Migration has been the basis of civilization. Migration has been the basis of civilization. The earliest migration was very slow, which includes the evolution of man in Africa and his eventual spread across nations. So if you could recollect, we all know that the species of man came up in the continent of Africa, right? So from Africa, the continents were united. I mean, the continents were united. Remember, like it was together. It was together, and then from there onwards, people had spread to different parts of the world. So, so the earliest migration from where it begins, the earliest migration began from the continent of Africa. So in this point, just underline Africa. So the words earliest migration and Africa, just underline that. Okay. These movements are better referred to as cultural diffusion. These movements are better referred to as a cultural diffusion. Second point, the most perceptible is perceptible. The most perceptible migration, which was faster and over longer distances, started by the Europeans over sea routes. So they came in search of tea, spices, etc. Third point. The first major phase of migration from Europe was from the Portuguese and Spanish towards South and Central America, South America and Central America. The Portuguese concentrated in the regions of Brazil, whereas Spanish spread further westwards across Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, and other Central American nations, and finally moved towards the United States. Now, for a quick information, Portuguese, Spanish, these languages were called as Latin languages, right? Have you heard of this term, Latin languages? So Portuguese and Spanish are basically Latin languages. And these people, they essentially concentrated in the regions of Central America and South America. And that's the reason why you have many American nations, like many American nations are called as Latin American states. That's the reason they are called as Latin American states. All right. continue in the same point. The consequence of Spanish and Portuguese invasion was that the local indigenous races have been almost wiped out. For example, the most dramatic decline was for the Incas of Peru. Incas, INCAS, was for the Incas of Peru. So what happened here is, after these Spain and Portuguese people, they came into Central and South America, they slowly removed, destroyed certain local classes of people. So that's one reason. And they exploited them, and they indulged in an activity which is called a slave trade. Our slave migrate in that process. When they are not active, they get killed. They were thrown out of the ships, and slowly one race of Peru called as Incas, they were actually very much decimated in numbers. Decimated in പറയുമ്പോൾ their numbers gradually started to decline. All right. So the next point, number four, here we are going to read about what is slave trade. I just now mentioned the word slave trade. So we are going to write about slave trade here. For quick information, before writing any further, let me give you a quick information how questions can be asked from here in this portion. Now, this is a very, very important portion. They will ask you, what is migration? That will be a very short introduction item. What is migration? They will ask you, explain the evolutionary aspect of migration from the early man stages, to up to the present day, or from the 16th 15th century. That's when your Spain and Portuguese people started coming. So your 15th century to the present day, something like that. So you have to mention about the evolutionary aspect. എങ്ങനെയാണോ നമ്മുടെ മൈഗ്രേഷൻ ആദ്യം തൊട്ട് ഇപ്പോ the latest 2020s വരെ എങ്ങനെയാണോ migration, how is it been happening. So we'll be doing till the latest trends of migration. All right. So we'll start from the early man, we'll come up to the 2020s period. All right. Right. The fourth point. Second phase of migration of the Europeans. Second phase of migration of the Europeans was during 1600 to 1800. Where the African population was forced to migrate towards cotton, sugarcane, rubber plantations in America. This is called as slave trade. Full stop. The African slaves populated and impacted the racial composition of southern US, Caribbean islands and Brazil.
Miss, last sentence ഒന്നുകൂടി പറയാമോ?
The African slaves populated and impacted the racial composition of southern US, Caribbean islands and Brazil. Right, let me share the screen. And here you have to draw a quick diagram. So what is this? First of all, we need to know what are we talking about. We are talking about something called as slave trade. So this concept is not new to you. I will tell you, and then you will understand. Oh, idana slave trade. Angane aanu or feeling kittunadu. So let me just tell you. Europeans, they are in need of two things. Europeans, they are in need of two things. What is it? First of all, they need raw materials to make or to bring about manufactured products. This is colonialism, basically. This is colonialism or imperialism, basically. So they need raw materials. They need people to work on the fields to produce this raw material. And the next, of course, is they need markets. So the thing is, what happened is they colonized portions of North America and wait a second, let me complete this. Okay, fine. Now watch this. I think you can see the screen. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Now just observe this. In this region of Africa, there is too many slaves that they can obtain. There is too many slaves that they can obtain. In this region, they have good fields. So they have cotton cultivation. Ividakka cotton belt aanu. This region of USA is very well known for prairies. So you have wheat cultivation, then you have the cotton belt. So this region is very, very good for many agricultural activities. So what happened is they moved the slaves from African belt towards the American belt. This is the movement of slaves. Okay. From here, they will use the slaves. They will have some plantations here. They will use the slave to cultivate all the crops. Crops will grow very well. That will be serving as raw materials for the European nations, and finally the finished goods will be pumped back again into the colonies, right? So that's what they were using, the same knowledge. I mean, they were using the same technique in India also. If cotton, indigo, they will go to Europe, they will manufacture the goods there, they will come back and sell the finished product back in India at a very, very costly price. The same thing they were doing in Africa. They will take the slaves here, cultivate the crops here. Now, these are also regions which was colonized by the Europeans. And finally, they will take the raw material to Europe and they will send the manufactured goods back to the colonies. This triangle which is happening, is called as the slave triangle or slave trade. Take down this figure. So yes, are we done with the diagram? Yes. Have you finished the diagram? Can I go ahead? Can I dictate? Okay, fine. Right. Take down the next point. After the abolition, number 5, this is the 5th point. After the abolition of slave trade and the opening up of Suez Canal, migration towards Asia and from migration towards Asia and from Asia increased under the system of indentured labor. Heard of this term? This is what I was been discussing, indentured labor. Indentured labor, maybe in history, in modern India, you might have heard of this term, indentured labor. Indian labor system resulted in spread of Asians into Africa, into the Caribbeans and towards Southeast Asia and Pacific Islands. So even today, if you observe, let me tell you, do not write this. Even today, if you observe, there are many Indians who have been, who have settled down in parts of Africa, in parts of Indonesia, southeast parts of Asia, Thailand. So they have not settled, so they have not migrated yesterday. Generations to generations, they would have settled there. That's why if you observe in Thailand, there is one of the language of Thailand is Tamil, basically. So there are many languages. There are many people in Thailand who actually speak Tamil. So even in Malaysia, that applies. There are many people who have taken to these countries, who have actually migrated to these countries generations and generations before, not in this generation, like very long ago. All right, so these were the old migrations. Now coming to recent migrations. Have the heading as recent migrations. So here, first point, migration during and as a consequence of world wars. Migration during and as a consequence of world wars. So under this, the first point is A. Under this one, first point A, out migrations of Jews from Germany. B, with the formation of Israel, there was an out migration of local Arabs and Palestinians from Israel. Now understand something. Are we on the same page? Look at this. 1A, point number 1A tells that there is an in-migration of Jews from Germany. Point number 2 says, because of too much of Jews coming into Israel, what happened? There is an out migration of Arabs and Palestinians from Israel. So what did that create? That created the formation of the land of Palestine. The Palestinians from Israel, they took to create a new state for themselves by the name of Palestine. right? Now, 2A, first, second point, 2A, migrations within Africa because of tribal conflicts. 2B, so we are moving to a different continent here. We are talking about Africa here. So 2B, droughts of Sahel region. Sahel is Sahel. Droughts of Sahel region. Sahel basically comes in this belt of Sahara Desert, all right? So droughts of Sahel region led to the movement of tribes out of this region. 2C, migration from North Africa into South Europe. Put a small hyphen. Here, the major destination is France. Here, the major destination is France, where Africans from Libya, Algeria, etc., ended up in South France. So I will tell you a short story here. This is about 2C. This is about the 2C. I'll tell you a short story here. What happens is there is something called as North-South divide of France. You know what happened? From this region, this is where I'll be having Libya, Algeria. From here, people moved on to France. People moved on to France. So because of this movement, there is a condition that, or there is a situation that emerged. People in south parts of France, they will be mostly Africans, okay, and they will not be that rich, whereas the other parts of France, they will be having people very, very rich. So the north people are mostly very rich, the south people are not very rich. In fact, the south people, the southern parts of France have slums, poverty, and so on, okay. So this is what we call it as a north-south divide of France, which happened because of this African migration. Right, now coming to the next point, number 3, and write 3A, migration from India to America. Have the heading as migration, 3A, migration from India to America. So in the third subpart, which you are writing now, we'll be writing about the case of India, all right? So first thing that we are talking about with respect to India is how people migrated to America in migration from India to America in 60s and 70s, in 1960s and 70s. So maybe you can put a hyphen. Professionals like engineers and doctors migrated. 3B, migration from India to Middle East after 1970s. This happened after boom. This happened after the oil and construction boom, which led to majority of construction workers moving towards the Middle East. 3C, 1990s migration. Three major developments that influenced the migration in this period are, so another 3 bullet points: disintegration of USSR, which created migration from former Soviet Union towards the Western European parts. Next subpoint, globalization, emergence of WTO, rise of computer era, led to Indian software professionals migrating towards the US? So where exactly the Indians actually migrated to? In particular, which part of US has too much of Indians? Where do these software professionals go? They go to a place in California called as Silicon Valley, right? Have you heard of this word, Silicon Valley? Yes. So basically, India's Silicon Valley is called as? Basically, India's Silicon Valley is called as Bangalore. So right. So you can take that as an example. They migrated towards US. Within bracket, you can write Silicon Valley of Kashmir, Silicon Valley of California. Right. Now, next one, the third bullet point, conflicts in the Middle East. Conflicts in the Middle East. Like Iraq war, Afghan war, led to the rise of terrorism, leading to refugee migration from these regions towards Europe. Okay, then go for, see, already we have done first point is the migration that happened during and as a consequence of World War. The second one is migration that happened within Africa. The third one is migration that happened from India in particular. And number four, take down number four. In recent times, the migration from India has continued and here, along with US, Canada, Australia, along with US, and here, along with US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand have become the more favored destinations. Next point, number 5. The Middle East conflict intensified and the refugee problem continues to be a serious issue, and the Syrian migration is the new humanitarian crisis. So people here usually move to countries like Hungary, Germany, Greece, etc. So that also you write down, Hungary, Germany, Greece. Sixth point, Iraq ISIS movement have led to a considerable movement of people and refugees. Number 7, displacement due to environmental issues. In the future, problem of migration due to sea level rise and coastal submergence will be a major component. This set of migrants, or this set of migrants are called as climatic refugees. Okay, right now we are going on to something else called as laws of migration. laws of migration. This is something that is very, very important. Let me write it. Laws of migration. Okay. The first law is number one. First of all, let me explain this. Ravenstein's law. Ravenstein's law. Okay. So what does Ravenstein explain? Ravenstein tells, see, let's say that you want to watch a movie. The movie theater, the nearest movie theater is in, let's say, is in Kannur. The nearest movie theater is in Kannur. Will you go to watch a movie? Let's say your frequency of watching a movie will considerably drop. Yes, because it's so far away. Similarly, let us say that in a city A, a person is somewhere closely situated to a city A. Now, in city A, this person who is very, very well educated. This is, let's say, his hometown is 10 kilometers from this place. Okay, so he is getting almost around 50K in this particular city. Okay, now another job he gets, but that's about 300 kilometers away from his place in a city B, and that is giving him around 70K. Okay, now which one will he prefer? A normal general person who has got his own family will generally prefer this job, because this he can daily commute and come. This 300 kilometers job, he has to leave behind his family, he has to rent an apartment, uh, make too many adjustments with regard to his food and stuff like that. So he will not be preferring the job that he gets in city B. Yes, so Ravenstein's law talks about all of this, whether a person will take long distance migration or not, whether a person will take long distance migration or not. What are the factors, if at all, if he takes a long distance migration, what are the factors which will be which he will take into consideration? What will be the age group of a person who will migrate for over long distances? These are the general, whatever we think are general, excuse me, whatever we think are the general cases, general, what now, let me ask you, he will usually not prefer long distance migration, people will usually prefer short distance migration. So this is a very general commonsensical thing, but this one, Ravenstein has made it as a law, and that's what we are going to read it here. It's a very common sense based theory. So he's a very important geographer, urban geographer, and he has given out a set of laws. Let us understand about Ravenstein's laws now. Take down point number one. He says the first thing is people will usually prefer short distance migration. So here the first law says the greatest body of migrants, the greatest body of migrants, the greatest body of migrants travel short distances. What does that mean? Let's say a group of 50 people, individual people, Anna, they are not related to one another. They are getting a job, let's say in Bangalore. They are also getting a job somewhere in Kottayam. In that case, these people maybe who belongs to Pala will definitely prefer the job in Kottayam. They will daily come from Pala to Kottayam in a bus or something, but they will not prefer the job in Bangalore. This is Ravenstein's first law. The greatest body of migrants travel short distances. The second law, most of the migration is directed towards commercial centers. That is, most people travel for economic reasons. They travel for economic reasons. Third point, long distance migration is always towards commercial centers. Long distance migration is always towards commercial centers. Fourth point, people in urban areas migrate lesser than people in rural areas. This is a very, very important point. People in urban areas migrate lesser than people in the rural areas. Why? Because urban areas, there will be already a lot of facilities which will be available. So mostly people in the rural areas only will migrate from one place to another. Next one. Male migrants migrate over longer distances than female migrants. This is also common sense. It's the male who can travel longer distance, not the female. So generally, a stereotypical view ആണ് that male migrants can travel or migrate over longer distances than female migrants. Sixth point, most migrants are young males in the age group of 25 to 35 years. Every migration has a counter current, not necessarily with the same intensity, Full stop. I will explain this point, just wait. The next one, urban housing is always an issue in migration, and infrastructure will always be inadequate to deal with the influx of migrants. To deal with influx of migrants. What does the seventh point mean? Eighth point is simple, that if suppose, let's say, lot of people migrate from let's say Pala to Ernakulam, for that matter, and in that case, what will happen in Ernakulam? There will be issues of housing, there will be issues of water. People will not get water to drink properly, people will not have water to conduct their day-to-day activities. There will be problems of housing, infrastructure, so on. So wherever lot of people have been migrating, let's say people migrate to Bangalore, people migrate to Bombay. So in those cities, you will have a problem with respect to finding proper houses, finding proper sanitation facilities, and so on. Okay. So influx of migrants will be greater. Urban population problems will also be increasing. What does point number 7 say? Point number 7 says every migration has a counter current. What do you mean by that? See, let's say that I have people who migrate from their small villages. That is, from Pala, they are migrating. It's from a small village in Pala, they are migrating to maybe Ernakulam, okay, or Trivandrum for that matter. Now, what will happen is there will be a counter current. Some retired people who have retired, or there may be some retired people migrate from Trivandrum to their native village, which is Pala, from Ernakulam to their native village, which is Pala. So what is happening? Some young males are migrating from Pala to Trivandrum. Some old retired people will come and settle down in their native village. So there is a counter current may be with not the same intensity, but still there is a counter current which will happen. There are many cases. For example, very recently after Corona came, there are many situations in which people actually preferred the rural lifestyle. They took their laptops, started coming to the villages to work as a part of work from home. They started coming to villages and they started working from the villages, right? So there is always a counter current which will be happening from the city to the village. So that is what is mentioned in point number 7. So this is Ravenstein's law. This is Ravenstein's law. The second person, this person you might have heard before, not might have, you have heard before, Zipf. Where have you heard Zipf? What is Zipf's law? Where did you hear GK Zipf? Yes, RSR. Now remember the same Zipf guy, the same Zipf gives me some other laws based on urban migration. It is Zipf's law, otherwise called as distance decay law. Take this down, Zipf's law, otherwise called as distance decay law. Even this distance decay we have done previously also, but yes, for the sake of theory, let's write it down again. Zipf's law or distance decay law. Right. Just a second. So what is this distance decay law? What did I say before? As the distance from the city center, as the distance keeps on increasing, the influence that the city has on that particular set of people will also decrease. It will decrease. So it's like inversely proportional. You have a graph like this. As the distance increases, what will happen to the frequency of interaction frequency? That will be maximum when the distance is minimum, and it will keep on falling as the distance increases. You have a graph like this, right? Now take down number 2, Zipf's law. As the distance from the source region increases, the volume of migrants will decrease. This is in the volume of migrants will decrease. This is in conformity with Ravenstein's law that most migrants prefer short distance migration. What are we telling here? Zipf's law and Ravenstein's law are matching. That's what we are mentioning here. All right. The third most important thing is Stauffer's law. Stauffer's law. Stauffer's law or law of intervening opportunities. Law of intervening opportunities. So let's say that I have a city, that I am somewhere here. Okay. So I am planning to go to let's say I am planning to go to Trivandrum, okay, for a better job opportunity. But the distance from where I'm residing right now, which is Pala, is very, very, very long. But let's say that this education or job or something is available somewhere in the middle in the form of Kollam. Okay, so it's available somewhere in the middle. Okay, in that case, I will prefer Kollam rather than going all the way to Trivandrum. If there is an intervening spot, if there is an intervening spot which gives me the same opportunity, I will prefer this and not the major city. This is Stauffer's law. Take down the volume of migration. The volume of migration is inversely proportional to the number of intervening opportunities. This is again in conformity with Ravenstein's law that most people prefer migrating over short distances. India's National Capital Region planning in National Capital Region of Delhi, NCR Delhi. India's National Capital Region of Delhi's planning is in accordance to this theory. There are many satellite towns that have been planned around Delhi that can absorb satellite towns planned around Delhi that can absorb migrant population and not allow them to get concentrated in Delhi. So what are we discussing here? Instead of getting too many people to be concentrated in a place like Delhi, the government has done an intelligent planning by by the creation of certain towns satellite towns around Delhi which can absorb the population. So how did we define the satellite town? In fact, we defined it as towns which have been designed to absorb the overspill of population, right? This is what we have done, overspill of population. So satellite town of Delhi, can you give me an example? So it is Faridabad. I have written this down even in the last lectures in satellite towns. Ghaziabad, Faridabad, Meerut. So these are some of the examples of satellite towns of Delhi. Now understand something. Understand something and not allow them to concentrate in Delhi. Yes. So what have these towns done? They have created their own what do you call their own employment opportunities so that people will not crowd Delhi, but people will be there in these kinds of small intervening towns. All right. So that is about intervening opportunities. Let me erase this. Number 4 or fourth law is, this is the most important one after Ravenstein's law. This is the most important one, which is Lee's law. Lee's law or push-pull theory. according to this law, migration is the consequence of push-pull couple. Push-pull couple. Why do we call this as a couple? Because there will be always push and pull operating simultaneously. You will not find only push factors, you will not find only pull factors. In a normal practical situation, there will be two factors operating simultaneously. According to this law, migration is the consequence of push-pull couple, where there are factors that force people to migrate out of a region, called as push factors, and there are factors that attract migrants towards a destination, called as pull factors. As per Lee's theory, push-pull factors always act together full stop, while the push factors are more objective and absolute in nature. Within bracket, you can write drought, persecution. What is persecution? Like what the Nazis have done to the Jews. That's persecution. So what have I written? Drought, persecution. They are absolute. They are very absolute in nature. Whereas while the push factors are more objective and absolute in nature, the pull factors are more relative and depends on psychological perspectives of the individuals. Like what can be the pull factor? Economic reasons, educational reasons, and so on. Okay, fifth law is gravity model. It is gravity model. So this gravity model also, I remember teaching this in my other class of population geography, which is this social physics concept. Right? Now take this down. The same concept and here also we are applying. Gravity model, larger towns are more attractive to migrants than smaller towns. Larger towns are more attractive to migrants than smaller towns. So basically, what are they telling? Let's say that I have a town like, just a second. Let's say I have a town like maybe Trivandrum or something. Mostly people will be attracted to this larger town than my small place like Pala. So this is what they mean by gravity model. Larger the town, greater will be its force of attraction. Right. Now coming to the next concept, reasons of migration. Have the heading as reasons of migration. The first reason is economic factors. Number one, economic factors. Poverty, employment, quality of life have been the most common economic reasons for migration. Example, migration of engineers from India to US, slave trade, etc. Number 2, political factors. World War II and persecution of Jews led to migration, persecution of Rohingyas of Myanmar. This is important. Persecution of Rohingyas of Myanmar. Next bullet, migration after Middle East crisis, migration after disintegration of USSR, next point, migration after Iraq and Afghan wars, etc. Number 3, environmental factors. So here you can write climate change, droughts, famines. All right. Number 4, displacement because of developmental projects. Okay. This is a kind of forced migration. In India, mostly tribes have been highly impacted by mostly impacted by such migration patterns. Within bracket, for now write this, but later we will be dealing or never mind, do not write this. We'll deal this separately. Virginia Saksa report, never mind, we'll deal this separately. So tribes, right now, just understand this, tribes have been migrated because of forced reasons and because of developmental projects. Yes. In next one, fifth reason, dualistic economic theory. In an economy where agriculture coexists with manufacturing and services sector, and where agriculture is a sizable part of the economy, agricultural and rural areas will always be laggards, and because of disparities and relative poverty, agricultural rural areas will always be areas of net out migration. Hence, there will be always rural to urban migration. What have they done here? What have we discussed here? So there are some economies, like for example, the typical case of India. What happens is we are a dualistic economy. We have good services sector in one hand, and we are still dependent on agriculture. Majority of the population is still dependent on agriculture. This is what we call it as a dualistic economy. In such cases, what will happen is people from the rural areas, they will leave behind agriculture, because agriculture, what will happen, there will not be much of money that will come out of agriculture. They will be naturally attracted to move towards the cities. Okay, so from here, what did we understand? Because of this, there will be always a migration that will happen from rural to the urban centers. Okay, so that is dualistic economic theory. In India, continue, in India, disparities increased dramatically after the 1991 economic reforms, and villages have shrunk. Villages have shrunk in size, whereas tier 1 and tier 2 cities, tier 1 and tier 2 cities have grown more, along with associated urban problems of congestion and lack of infrastructure development. Okay. Fine. One more theory. Number 6. Reasons for migration. Dependency theory slash core periphery model. Core periphery model as given by Friedman. So you have a core city, followed by that you have a peripheral zone. Okay, so what they say is this peripheral zone is actually dependent on the economic cores, the core city, and from here to here there will be always some migration. Okay, this is core periphery model. Take down. Economies are so related that there are regions referred to as economic cores, which have high propensity of economic growth, and there are regions which are source regions of raw materials, minerals, and of labor as well.
Ma'am, can you just repeat like the last part that you said?
Okay, economies are so related that there are regions referred to as economic cores which have high propensity of economic growth, and there are regions which are source regions of raw material, minerals, and of labor as well. In the dependencies that gets created, dependencies എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് this outer region ആണ്. After around this core, you have some peripheral regions, no? So they are otherwise called as dependencies. Okay, so in the dependencies that get created, there will be migration from the source regions called as economic peripheries towards the destination, which are the economic cores. Maybe you can take a rough figure like this. A core, a periphery, from here to here, there will be migration. Such migration is typical of a labor movement towards manufacturing centers and large urban economies. Okay, here you take down a small example here. Example, post-globalization, the migration from India towards US or during the industrial revolution, the migration of labor towards manufacturing centers leading to rise of US and West European economies can be illustrated as a consequence of such theories. Okay, consequence of migration. Consequences of migration. Have the heading as consequence of migration. And write the first point, number 1. Migration is a desirable process. Migration is a desirable process. Next point, migration is a beneficial process as it benefits the migrants themselves, the destination region mostly, and also the source regions from where migrants originate. Why? Let's take the case of Kerala. What will happen here? This is mostly the very generalized case. Migration is always migration is a beneficial process. It benefits the migrants themselves, the destination region that receives the migrants, and also the source region from where the migrants originate. What happens? Like from Kerala, what happened? People moved on to the West Asian countries, including Middle East countries, popularly called as. And what happened is they brought in too much of good economic drive to the Middle East countries. They brought in with them the whole set of knowledge. Yes, Keralites, they brought in the whole set of knowledge that they have. They drove the Middle East economy. So that's something that's very, very, even today, when something wrong happens to people in Kerala, a very strong voice emanates from Saudi nations, right? So they're hugely supportive. So that's something that the Indian diaspora there is extremely strong. And that's something that we need to be proud of. And in a way that has benefited the destination region. It has benefited the migrants themselves. It has also benefited the source region. Why? Because we are getting what is called as the Kerala is called as a money order economy. Heard of this term? Money order economy, because it's said that age-old parents, they live upon the money orders which their sons and daughters send from abroad. So that's why there is this term called as money order economy. All right. So where are we? Yeah, right. So this is a very important statement. The next one, number 3. For many people, migration is the only option that they have to escape poverty, hunger, persecution, and death. So for them, migration is a part of right to life. Is a part of right to life. Almost all economies, next point, almost all economies and major urban centers have benefited from migrant laborers and migrants have sustained the source region with remittances and investment that they carry with them later. That they carry with them later. Next point. However, there are also some problems associated, like migrants being accused of terrorism and corrupting the local cultures So what are we telling here in this point? There are certain issues. Where it has been told that it is because of the migrants that there have been lot of illegal activities coming up. They are corrupting. We are culturally very great, but these migrants, they came here and they corrupted our culture. So let's look at the previous example that I've discussed, France. Yes, in France, what happened? There is this north-south divide in France. Usually the people in the north parts of France, they will see the south France people as like they are very bad people. These are Africans who have come here. The skin color is also different. So these are some things that they say that the southern France, they come from a region called as Ghetto. Heard of this term? Ghettos? Ghettos, have you heard of this term? Ghetto is a very bad word. Bad word in പറയാൻ പറ്റത്തില്ല. Ghetto is like slums. Slums only. Ghetto is like slums only. But the Americans mostly associate this term with black people. So they have made it as a bad word, but it's not a bad word. It's like just referring to slums. So we call the people as slum people. They call them as ghettoers. Okay, so what they see is the people who come from slums, the people who come from ghettos, they are the ones who are responsible for all terrorist activities. They are the ones who are responsible for many illegal drug dealing and so on. Okay, but this is not correct. Though this kind of a view is there, it is not correct. It's not one set of people who corrupt a culture, right? It's not one set of people who corrupt a culture. Culture gets corrupted with many activities. So this is not perfectly correct statement to tell that migrants വന്നത് കൊണ്ട് നമ്മുടെ culture പോയി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് അത് correct അല്ല. All right. Next thing is go for the next point. Cultural violence and xenophobia. Underline this word, xenophobia. cultural violence and xenophobia is unfortunately linked to migrants, but empirical data suggests that such regions have violence incorporated in their history, and migrants are only convenient targets and victims. Convenient targets and victims, and not the reasons for hate crimes, and not the actual reason for hate crimes. What are we telling here? Migrants are not exactly responsible for many of the criminal activities. Many migrants are innocently targeted. They are innocently targeted. This is happening so much in the Western countries. All right. Right. Now, consequence of migration, have this as a heading. Consequence of migration, a small heading thaneയാണ്. Consequence of migration in relation to demographic attributes. In relation to demographic attributes. So have this like this, our heading editha. Divide your small table or column is enough. Divide your page into two halves, source and destination. Source and destination. Here in source region, what will happen because of migration? Lot of young people will move from the source region to the destination region, right? So what will happen here? Apparently, the old age population will increase or not in the source region. The old age population will increase or not? Yes or no? Here. And here, what will happen in the destination? The youth population will increase. Second point, death rate, because old age people are very high, death rate will be high in the source region, whereas here in the destination region, death rate will be less. Third point, IMR, infant mortality rate, may be a bit higher here, but the destination will be mostly a city, and therefore IMR mortality rate will be very less because of advanced medical facilities. This can be a rural region. Fourth one, very high dependency ratio. Here, very low dependency ratio. What is dependency ratio? Let's say that you have your grandma and this is granddad. GD is granddad. Okay. So you have your grandma and grandpa here. They both gave birth to your father. Okay. I mean, yes. Yes. Now what happens is there will be one more set of grandmother and grandfather. They both gave birth to your mother. These two people later on gave birth to, let's say you are your only son or only daughter of your family. So you are the only son. After, let's say, when these people become 70 plus age, when these people became 50 plus age, when you become 20, this one son has to take care of father, mother, 2 sets of grandparents, 4 people. So 4 plus 2, 6 people are on the head of this small son. Yes. So the dependency ratio will be high when you have too much of old age people and too many infants. Too much of infant എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ 0 to 5. And what? Too much of old age people. Dependency ratio will be higher in the source region. Dependency ratio will be lesser in the destination region. Sex ratio will be higher in the source region. Why will sex ratio be high? Because all of the male are moving towards their destination cities. So the sex ratio in my villages, in that source region, will be very, very high. Whereas sex ratio will be very less in the destination city. Yes, these 5 points, you have to write it down in your notebook, but not like this. This is fine, you can take this down now, but examination you have to explain why death rate is higher here, why death rate is lower here, why old age population is higher, why sex ratio is higher, why dependency ratio is higher in all of these cases. Is this clear? Is this chart clear for everybody? Those 5 points. Take this down, take this chart down. Now here in the sex ratio, maybe you can write, maybe in this you can write. First of all, take it down, then I will tell you. Yes, done with the table. Take this down, small one line alone, you take it down here within bracket in the sex ratio, within bracket, you write, it doesn't mean, this doesn't mean within a sex ratio, or small bracket, maybe you can write this. Higher sex ratio doesn't mean that it is a culturally progressive society. Since male migrated towards the destination region, female population dominated in the rural regions. Okay. Fine. So that concludes the chapter number 3 of paper 1. In chapter number 7 of paper 2, I have one small part left, which is functional classification of Indian cities. One set of classification can be asked, so adana maatrana edukkendathu. In chapter number 7 of paper 2, only one topic is left that we will cover in some time, maybe in next class or something. We are going to deal about cultural setting, chapter number 6 of paper 2. There also, if you observe this, നമ്മൾ അതിൽ migration എടുത്തിട്ടുണ്ട്, പിന്നെ population problems that we have done, but tribes, first set of few things are there: historical perspective, racial, linguistic, ethnic diversities. These are some things that we have to take it up. All right. Migration matram we have covered, some population problems we have covered. But apart from that, there is many things. So let's do this. Starting with population composition of India. Start paper 2, chapter number 6. Population composition of India. Okay, take this down. Population composition refers to, again, lots of theories have to be written. Okay, take down. Population composition refers to what attributes is a particular population composed of. Example of attributes can be race, religion, language, occupation, etc. Racial composition refers to studying the population composition based upon its races. So if you observe the present day population, just follow me. If you observe the present day population, we are a mixture of different racial groups. I remember telling this in GS classes that if not for the presence of Himalayas, the entire population composition of India would be very, very different. We would all be looking like Chinese because of the Mongoloid invasion. We call them as Mongoloid races. What is the characteristic feature of Mongoloid races? Elongated eyes, fair skin. So you have many characters of Mongoloids like that. They have a flat nose, they have flat nosed people, stuff like that, right? Now, but we are not looking like Chinese now. Only the northeasterners are having certain Mongoloid features, right? Then if you observe the people in Andaman and Nicobar, how do they look like? They look more like the Negroes of Africa. They look like Negroes of Africa. So the Negritos, so they belong to a classification of race called Negritos. All right. So similarly, when we are comparing between North Indian people and South Indian people, North Indian and South Indian people, we also have some huge differences when we are comparing about our color of skin and so on. Okay, so there is always a difference in terms of how you look, how your hair looks, how your forehead looks, your facial features. Now, these are physical features of any human being. It is dependent on racial intermingling. What is it? Racial intermingling. This decides how my physical features would look like, how my physical features are designed. This decides what language I speak. Do I speak a Dravidian language? Do I speak an Aryan language? All that is decided by what race I belong to. In India, if I'm talking about the racial intermingling, there are some prominent races. There are some prominent races which we have to discuss. Okay. So the present day, continue writing, the present day population composition of India is a conglomeration of people belonging to different racial groups. Major racial groups of India include number 1, Negritos. Number 1, Negritos. Heard of this term Negroes? Yes. So how do Negroes look? Heard of this term Negroes? How do Negroes look mostly? They look dark in color. Yes, they have a kind of a curly hair here and there. So these are some of the features of my Negritos. So take down. These races, these racial people, these racial or this race belongs to Africa and islands of Pacific Ocean. Major physical features are tall, dark, and muscular. They will be mostly tall. Yes, they will. If you observe the Maasai tribes of Africa, the Maasai tribes of the African Savannah region, you can see the one character is that they're very tall. They are very tall. Okay, so they are tall, they are dark, and they are very muscular. The Negritos of India are, however, a variant of Negroes who are comparatively shorter in height. In fact, let me tell you a quick story. If you compare our heights, if you compare a general normal male's height, Indian male's height with that of Americans, you will find that Americans are very tall. Africans are very tall. Indians are generally criticized for their short height. In fact, when Gandhi entered into England, one thing he was criticized is for his clothes and for his very lean look. Another thing is he was also criticized for his height. He was called as a short guy. Okay, so he was very short. So in fact, all Indians are short for that matter. Most of the Indians are shorter when compared to the other races of the world. All right. So we are a shorter format or a shorter variant of Negritos. Negritos എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് usually very tall ആണ്. പക്ഷെ നമ്മുടെ ഒരു Negritos എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് we are very short. Major physical features include, put in bullets, number 1, short in height, broad Sorry, I lost the connection. Second. Okay, so primitive tribes like Jarawas in Andaman Nicobar. Jarawas is Jarawas. This is Jarawas. Have you heard of Jarawas of Andaman and Nicobar? In which context have you heard them? In which context have you heard about this people?
Means they were isolated tribe in North Sentinel Island.
I couldn't hear that properly.
It's an
Entire
isolated tribe in North Sentinel.
Oh, decimated tribes in
North Sentinel Island.
Sentinel Islands. Okay.
Sentinel, okay.
Sentinel. Fine. That's okay. The idea is they are very, very, very primitive tribes. They are primitive tribes. And the point is, a lot of people, like one very recently, they were in news because one journalist come a tourist, a photographer come tourist, a European. He visited the Andaman and Nicobar. So he has been primarily instructed that you should not be visiting the Jarawas because they are very dangerous. They are very dangerous. They are not acclimatized to the normal way of how we live, right? They are not used to us. So when you throw them, when you go near them, they will start shooting at us. So this guy, he went there in spite of heavy warnings from the government, and he was killed by the people there. Another issue why they were in the news. Another issue is that some of the tourists who went there, uh, they mistreated, they ill-treated some of the tribes of Andaman and Nicobar. Like from a very long distance, they used to throw the bananas, they used to throw Pepsi bottles, Coca-Cola bottles, and so on. So it's like treating another human being in a very, very inhuman manner. So that's something why the Jarawas were in news. Now the Jarawas, if you had observed, if you can Google them and if you can see them, they will look more like Negroes. Okay, so primitive tribes like Jarawas in ANN in Andaman and Nicobar, Uralis in Nilgiris. This is another tribe. Uralis in Nilgiris. Angami Nagas of Northeast. Palayans in Palani Hills are some of the examples of Negrito race people. Number 2. The next one after Negrito race, number 2 is Proto-Astroloids. They belong to, they belong to East Mediterranean region. Physical features include, right, takedown in the form of bullets, takedown in the form of bullets like this, rounded forehead, next, slightly protruding jaws, next, dark brown skin color, next, more muscular than Negritos, next, they are long-headed when compared to Negritos. They are long-headed when compared to Negritos. Yes, while writing Negritos, maybe there you can add one more point. In Negritos section, you can add one more point. Negritos have curly hair, woolly / curly hair. proto-astroloids la ezhudumbo not curly hair as in negritos. These people, negritos people, have woolly or curly hair. പക്ഷെ proto-astroloids അത്ര ഒരു curly hair കാണത്തില്ല. Okay, now example, no, not example, they are found in next point, they are found in central and southern regions of India. Example, not example, put a small hyphen, central and southern regions of India, put a small hyphen and write Bhil tribes, Gonds, Santals, Malpaharis. Very important, underline Malpaharis. Wait, I will write it here. Malpaharis. Underline Malpaharis, very important. Maybe you can read some of the things about them. So these are the proto-astroloids whom we can find in the northern parts of India. Now, just a second. Okay, in the south, take down some example of these tribes are present, are proto-astroloids present in the North India. With regard to South India, take down some other examples. First one is Chenchus. Where is Chenchus? Where are Chenchus from? Have you heard of Chenchus? Chenchu tribes. Now, this was asked in UPSC. I think it was in prelims or something. Chenchus of Andhra Pradesh. Okay, Chenchus of Andhra Pradesh. You might have heard of one local tribe of Kerala called as Eruvas. Heard of Eruvas? Right. So heard of Eruvas, have you? Eruvas mostly are from the Alapi district and so on, Eruvas. And then you have Kurumbas. Kurumbas, I believe they are from Tamil Nadu. And even parts of Kerala, Kurumbas. All right. So they are proto-astroloids. Coming to the next category, let me clear this, which is third one, which is Mongoloids. Just a second. Okay, the next one, third one is Mongoloids. So these people, my Mongoloids, migrated to India from China. Prominent features include round and broad head. Next, flat nose. Yes, Chinese will have, they will have short nose, right? They will have a nose which is like, you cannot even see that they have a nose in the face. So we call that as a flat nosed feature. They are short in height. Next one, short in height. Next one, straight hair. Next one, little or no hair in body and face. So we have a lot of hair in our hands and legs. So that's body hair basically. So Mongoloids will have little or no hair in body and face. Found in regions of Ladakh, Sikkim, and Arunachal Pradesh. And then put tribes found in, found in, and take down the names, and then write tribal names, and write down Garo, Kasi, Chaintia, Miri, Mishmi, Chakmas, Bhotias of Sikkim. Understand here, I want you to go and refer about Chakmas. Chakmas, these are refugees, so they have a lot of problems. So Chakma issues, maybe you can take this down. This is something that is very, very important. Chakma issues is very important for your prelims. All right, that's about Mongoloids. The next one is, so Mongoloids are basically the Chinese people. All right, the next one, let me clear this. Number 4 is about Mediterraneans. Mediterraneans. Okay, so Mediterraneans, first thing, they belong to Southwest Asia and Central Asia. Migrated to India around 2nd century BC. 2nd century BC. Prominent physical features include wooden bullets, dark skin color. Next one, good physical build. And that's enough. That's enough. And then continue the next point. They are the earliest bearers. They are the earliest bearers of Hinduism in India. So what does that mean? They are the ones who started Indus Valley civilization. They are the earliest bearers of Hinduism in India and became the chief architects of Indus Valley civilization. Today, they make up most of the population of Rajasthan, UP, and Haryana, the so-called lower caste in India. And later on, they were pushed down south and also formed the bulk of Dravidian population So what happened is, so here, this is Aryan invasion theory, basically. So the Mediterraneans, now tell me something, what did you write in the beginning? They belong to Southwest Asia. And did you write Central Asia here?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, please cut it. It's not Central Asia. They belong to Southwest Asia and East Mediterranean. Region. Southwest Asia and the East Mediterranean region. Okay, now, so what happened is they are the earliest bearers of Hinduism, which means they started Indus Valley civilization. And slowly, the Aryans, when they came, because of the Aryan invasion, these Mediterranean people, these Mediterranean races, people who are who formed the IVC, they were slowly pushed down south, and it is the Mediterraneans who combined with proto-astroloids to form what is today's Dravidian races. Dravidian races. So Mediterraneans along with proto-Australoids, their combination led to the formation of Dravidians. Okay, next one, number 5. Number 5, Caucasoids. Caucasoids. Now, these people are the ones who belong to Central Asia. So, belong to Central Asia, migrated to India in 2 groups. Migrated to India in 2 groups. A, brachycephals. So, brachycephals. And B, Nordic. So, write brachycephals and write some 1 or 2 lines. They are tall, muscular, and having fair complexion. Tall, muscular, with fair complexion. B, Nordics. And they form the last wave of migration to India. They spoke the Aryan language, and they are mainly concentrated in northwestern parts of India, Punjab, put a small hyphen, Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, mainly represented by upper caste Hindus. Prominent physical features are, put in bullets. So these are prominent physical features of both sections of Caucasoids, both brachycephals as well as Nordics. Okay, so prominent physical features are a strong body, well built, fair complexion. Next one, a long head. Next one, well developed nose. Long head, well developed nose. So those are the 5 important races of India. All right. And what is the last race? The last race is the most important one. Most important, Allah, but the one that created a lot of change in the history, because the Caucasoids are basically the Aryans. The Caucasoids who came from the Central Asia, they are basically the Aryans. Okay. So continue some theory. Continue some theory. Despite many racial conflicts and debates on indigenous population of India, the most agreed fact is that man did not evolve on the Indian subcontinent. Where did he evolve from? He evolved in the African continent, right? So man did not evolve in the Indian subcontinent. Man evolved in Africa and thereafter moved to different parts, including India. Next paragraph. The migration of different races was in different phases. Phases, P-H-A-S-E-S. The earliest migration was by Negritos, and the next wave of migration comprised of proto-Australoids, Mediterraneans, and Mongoloids, and finally by Caucasoids. The Mediterranean and proto-Australoids together form the Dravidian population. Okay, so that together form the Dravidian population. Maybe you can continue. Later entrants were the Caucasoids. Later entrants were the Caucasoids, and Aryan speaking population was one of them. And Aryan speaking population was one of them. Next heading alone you give tribal population of India. Major tribes, tribal areas and their problems. That's the topic, major tribes, tribal areas and their problems. So I will give you a quick introduction today. Next class, we will be writing down some theory notes. All right. So first of all, understand this. These tribes, okay, whomever we have, we are telling as not so well developed. We are the major people. They are the downtrodden. We call them STs and so on. Okay, so they are the, in fact, whatever we call them as STs, we ridicule them, right? We do not give them much of respect. We treat them very badly. We have treated them like very badly, but right now things are improving. They are, in fact, the original settlers of the country. They are considered to be the original settlers of the country. So there are many tribal population throughout the country. In fact, if you're comparing a state-wise distribution, which state has got the highest tribal population, the largest tribal population? It is in Madhya Pradesh. All right. So if you have MP, there will be a lot of people, but most of them, high caste people will be very less. A lot of people are actually tribes. And another region is Lakshadweep. So another region is Lakshadweep has got too many tribes. Similarly, my northeastern parts have got too many tribes. In fact, there can be a question like this. Maybe you can take down the question also. Write a short note on tribal diversity of Northeast India. Short notes on tribal diversities of Northeast India. So this can be a question. As a part of introduction, let me continue. So these tribal population, of course, what do they have? They have a very distinctive culture. They are differentiated by means of their culture. They have a history of their own. So they have settled in forest. They take to many of their livelihood is also revolving around the forest. As per the latest census, 2011 census, our census data which analyzed more, there are almost around 705 tribal groups in our country. Okay, and STs totally contribute to about 8.6% of the total population of the country. All right. Now take down some of the famous or most important tribes of the country. And then more of this notes we will continue in the next class. But now we'll be taking down some of the important tribes of the country. So we will be taking 10 states or 10 groups. Number one, starting from Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir. So we will not take the divided Jammu and Kashmir. We are taking the integrated Jammu and Kashmir. All right. So Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. You can take it as Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh together. So the first one is Gaddis, Bakarwals. Second one is from Himachal Pradesh. I have Gaddis. And here the most important one is Gujars. Third one, Uttarakhand. I have Bhotias. Bhotias also belong to Sikkim. A very, very important one is Garhwalis. Garhwalis, Humayunis, Humayun Himalayas we have. So they are called as, let me rewrite it again, Humayunis. Huh. Okay, and then I have Andaman and Nicobar Islands. There I have Andamanis, Nicobaris, Shompens, Jarawas, Sentinelese, Onges. Okay, and then you can take Tamil Nadu, Uralis, Thodas. This is something that's important. Palayans. And then for Central India, Beals, Santals, Gonds, Gonds, Mundas, Kols, Kols, etc. For Assam, Bodos, Kuki, Kuki, Bodos and Kukis. Meghalaya, for Meghalaya, Garo, Kasi, Jaintia, Garo, Kasi, Jaintia, and Chakmas. For Arunachal Pradesh, Abor, Miri, Mishmi, and Lush. Abor, Miri, Mishmi, and Lushai, and Abor. For Kerala, one of the most important, very, very important tribe is Chola-Nayakan tribes. Yes, Chola-Nayakans, Kurumbas, again parts of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, Kadars, you have Uralis also having part of this and that. You have a part of Chola-Nayakan is Katu-Nayakan, and you have Koragas. Okay, so they are the most important people, tribal population of Kerala, right? So that now in Northeast specifically, what tribe, I mean, what sort of racial population can you see? We can see mostly Mongoloid races, right? You can see mostly Mongoloid races. So in fact, most of the tribes, whichever you have written out of the Northeast, will be mostly Mongoloid races, and some part of Proto-Australoids will also be seen. So Northeast is considered as culturally, in the tribal point of view, it is considered to be very, very diverse, very, very diverse in origin. And mostly they belong to Mongoloid race. Take down these points, these are important. Mostly they belong to Mongoloid race, but there are also some Proto-Australoids who are present there as well. Now their main religion, Valembo, their main religion is, can somebody guess what it will be? I'm talking about Northeast. Any guesses of what religion it can be?
Christianity.
Christianity. It is mostly Christianity. So Christianity is high, followed by Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay. So Christianity followed by Hinduism and Buddhism. So that is it for today's class. We will deal about the rest of the tribal issues and stuff like that in the next class. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.